Well, there is still a wide gap between climate action promised by countries and their results. The UN Environment Programme's latest emissions gap report says the world's rising temperatures will blow past the warning limit of 2 degrees if current plans are not strengthened. But despite that dire warning, the report says there is still hope to lower that increase rate. The CBC's Anayat Singh joins us with more on this. What are some of the key takeaways here?
So this is an annual report, the emissions gap report from the UN, and basically it's a scientific analysis of the gap between the promised climate plans from countries and the goals of the 2015 Paris Agreement. So the goal is to limit global warming to 2 degrees and ideally 1.5 degrees. But this year, I have the numbers here, the report says that if all of the climate plans are implemented, we are headed to 2.6 to 2.8 degrees of warming by 2050. So we are blowing past those Paris Agreement targets. What's worse is those are just the promised plans. If we just look at the current policies in place around the world, then we're heading to 3.1 degrees. So far ahead of where we should be. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres spoke about this today.
Today's emissions gap report is clear. We are playing with fire, but there can be no more playing for time. We are out of time. Closing the emissions gap means closing the ambition gap, the implementation gap, and the finance gap.
Now, I have to note that this is actually an improvement. It doesn't sound like it, but this emissions gap report comes out every year. And, in years past, we were headed to 4 degrees, 5 degrees of warming. So we are doing really, much better than that. Countries have ramped up ambition, but it's not enough. Is there still time to hit these targets? So that's the good news from the report. Okay. The report does make it clear that despite the dire situation, the window to limit warming to 2 degrees, even 1.5 degrees, is still there. It's a narrow window, but it's there. Essentially, what we need to do is we need to cut emissions by 57% by 2035. So a drastic emissions cut in the next 10 years could help us reach those Paris Agreement goals. Inger Andersen, who is the director of the UN Environment Programme, spoke about this today.
This is a gargantuan task that requires global mobilization on a scale and a pace never seen before. But it does, for the moment at least, remain technically possible. Nations can deliver the cuts needed by investing heavily in solar and wind energy, in forests, in reforming buildings, transport and industry sectors, and more.
What Inger Andersen is talking about mainly here is the power sector, so the generation of electricity. That is what takes in the most fuel and emits the most carbon dioxide all over the world. So what she's saying is that switching to sources like solar energy, wind energy, give us the best hope at cutting emissions. And also she's talking about protecting nature, using forests and ecosystems to also cut emissions.
How does this report play into the upcoming climate summit?
So this report comes out every year, and there's a reason why they put it out, a few weeks before the annual UN climate summits. This year's summit is happening in Azerbaijan in November, and this report will form kind of the basis for negotiations. It sets the stage for what the gap is and how to get there, which sectors need to be approached. It also talks about the need for more financing. So, the UN says that we need financing of about 1 to 2 trillion US dollars a year to get to net zero. And so this sets the stage for negotiations around the financing and also, what needs to be done.
Okay, well, we'll see what comes out of the summit as well. Anayat, thanks so much for this.
Thank you.
That's CBC's Anayat Singh.